It's good to be back with you in our ongoing video series, ESG, Acronym to Action. Today, we're going to discuss transitional energy strategy, which is a very key component of the whole ESG strategy. But first, I'd like to talk about a topic which is sometimes we hear about it in the news, and it kind of has some connotation that may be a little confusing. So we're going to talk about greenwashing today. Well, what is that? Well, greenwashing was a term that was developed in the mid-1980s, and it describes companies or organizations that try to present themselves as green without actually accounting for the total environmental costs or footprint. And so often we throw projects out there, or we do some stopgap measures, or what like we call Band-Aid solutions to things. And then we say, oh, well, look at, we're green and we did this, we recycle. But it goes a lot further than that. And so as we are developing ESG strategy into something that's more critical in terms of how our companies and organizations actually physically and philosophically operate, this whole concept of greenwashing is something that people are looking for. So one of the first things that we see is if you are involved in a company, an organization, and you are trying to make positive change, you're making that change with intention, you're going to maybe want to make some press releases. You're going to want to let people know, either on social media or in the traditional media. You're going to say, well, we're doing green initiatives, and this is what we're going to do. Well, what we have to make sure as organizations and companies that are presenting this concept of going green, of really living out ESG, we have to make sure that green initiatives here and avoiding discussion about environmental issues over there is not going to work. Because obviously, like we talked about in the first video, one of the issues is social media, with the proliferation of that, has become so much ingrained in our operating culture that now people are able to find out that information. So key and very important is before you make the announcements and you get anything out there into the public, you have to make sure that you're following through at all levels on the environmental side, on the green side. Well, now what we're seeing is that companies engage in environmental audits, to present the factual green data to investors. That's becoming more and more important. And so we see that also investment firms are trying to integrate green checklists into their data sets to analyze investment worthiness. So as these green funds and investment banks are beginning to mature and develop and become part of the mainstream in terms of investment, they're starting to look at these concepts of greenwashing a lot more closely than they did before. And the key truly is, how does it impact the bottom line? And not just the financial bottom line, but we've talked about this before, the total bottom line, which includes the social impact, environmental impact, operational impact, and footprint that you have. These are key components of discussing a real ESG and green strategy on a go-forward basis, as opposed to just something that is greenwashed. And finally, we do know, and this is actually some recent data that I've been reading as well, that the US Securities and Exchange Committee, the SEC, is now creating reporting standards for all companies in terms of reporting green data. So in other words, if you have the green data, you have to report it. There's going to be a set of standards that are there in terms of that. So you can see how this concept is really changing and becoming much more important. Okay.